The highway stretched endlessly under a storm-heavy sky, wind whipping through broken fences and the scent of rain thick in the air. A small, aging car crawled along the asphalt, its engine coughing like it had a secret it was trying to hide. Inside, a young mother gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands. Her name was Sarah, a single mother of a 6-year-old girl named Lily, and she was driving toward what she prayed would be a new beginning. Her job interview in the next town was her last hope. She had $20 left in her wallet, half a tank of gas, and dreams too fragile to afford another failure. But just a few miles from the city limits, the car shuddered violently, gave one final wheeze, and died on the side of the road. Before we go deeper, if you believe in kindness, miracles, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who still believes in good people, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart. The rain started to fall just as Sarah stepped out of the car, the hood steaming and the engine hissing in protest. Lily sat in the back seat clutching her stuffed rabbit, asking softly if everything would be okay. Sarah smiled, a brave, trembling smile, and said it would. But deep down, panic clawed at her chest. There was no one to call, no roadside assistance, no family nearby, and no time to waste. She stood in the rain, trying to flag down passing cars, but no one stopped. Minutes turned to an hour, and her hope began to slip away. Then, out of the gray mist, headlights appeared, sleek, powerful, out of place on this lonely road. A black SUV slowed down beside them, and a man stepped out holding an umbrella. He looked like he'd walked out of another world. Pressed shirt, expensive watch, confident posture. Sarah's heart sank. He looked too important to bother with someone like her. But then he spoke, not with arrogance, but with quiet concern. He asked if she was all right, if she needed help. She explained her car had broken down, that she was late for an interview that could change her life. Without hesitation, he rolled up his sleeves and opened the car's hood. The rain soaked his clothes, but he didn't seem to care. He worked calmly, checking wires and oil levels, getting his hands dirty in a way that didn't match the luxury of his car. Lily watched from the back seat, wide-eyed, as if witnessing a superhero in disguise. After a few tense minutes, the engine coughed back to life. Sarah almost cried from relief. She thanked him over and over, trying to offer him the little cash she had, but he refused. He simply said, "Just make it to that interview." His voice carried the kind of certainty she hadn't heard in a long time. Then, without giving his name, he walked back to his SUV and drove away, leaving behind the faint scent of rain and hope. Sarah made it to her interview, drenched and late, but somehow full of confidence she didn't know she had. The hiring manager listened to her story, impressed by her determination, and gave her the job on the spot. For the first time in months, things started to look up. She and Lily moved into a small apartment near her new office, and life began to steady itself. Yet, she never forgot the stranger who'd stopped in the rain to help her. Weeks passed, and Sarah excelled at her new job. The company she worked for was small but had big connections. It provided catering and event support for major corporate clients. One morning, her supervisor called her in and said their team had been selected to handle an exclusive corporate gala for a large firm in the city. "Be on your best behavior," her boss warned. "The CEO himself will be there." Sarah nodded, nervous but determined. She wanted to prove she belonged here, that she wasn't just some struggling mother who'd stumbled into a lucky break. The night of the gala arrived. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, polished floors, and people who looked like they'd never worried about a single bill in their lives. Sarah wore her catering uniform, hair tied neatly, trying to blend in as she helped serve guests. Lily, who couldn't stay home alone, waited in a corner with coloring books, her mother occasionally glancing over to make sure she was safe. The event was a success. Smiles, laughter, and glasses of champagne filling the air. Then the crowd went quiet as the CEO arrived. He was tall, composed, and radiated quiet authority. the kind of presence that made everyone instinctively stand straighter. Sarah didn't see his face clearly at first, too focused on her work. But Lily did. Her small hand froze mid-coloring. Her wide eyes lit up, and in a voice that carried through the crowd, she shouted, "That's the man who fixed our car, Mommy!" The room fell silent. Every head turned, and Sarah's tray nearly slipped from her hands. She looked up, and her heart stopped. Standing on the stage, smiling faintly, was the same man who had stopped on the highway weeks ago, the man who had gotten his hands dirty. To help a stranger in the rain was now standing under golden light, introduced as Ethan Carter, the CEO of Carter Industries, one of the biggest firms in the region. For a moment, Sarah wished she could disappear. She feared people would think she'd made it up, that she was somehow trying to gain attention. But then Ethan's gaze found hers. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by something softer, a memory shared between strangers on a rainy night. He didn't say anything, didn't draw attention to her, but the warmth in his expression said everything. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Ethan approached her quietly. He thanked her for her hard work and asked if Lily was doing well. Sarah blushed, stammering, unable to find words. He smiled and told her he was glad to see she had made it to that interview. Before leaving, he handed her a business card and said, "If you ever need anything, anything at all, don't hesitate." Then he walked away, once again leaving her speechless. From that night on, life seemed to move in unexpected ways. Ethan began visiting the catering company more often, always finding excuses to check on upcoming events or sample new menus. But Sarah noticed he always lingered just a bit longer near her station, asking about her work, about Lily, about how things were going. He never made grand gestures, never crossed boundaries, just simple, genuine interest. Slowly, their conversations grew from polite exchanges to moments filled with laughter and quiet understanding. Sarah learned that Ethan, despite his wealth, had grown up with very little. His father was a mechanic who taught him to fix cars before he could drive them, which explained that night on the highway. "Helping you reminded me of him," he once admitted softly. Sarah shared her own story, how she'd lost her husband in an accident, how she'd promised Lily that she'd build a better life for them no matter what. The more they talked, the more they realized that kindness had connected them long before fate did. Months passed, and their lives intertwined in ways neither expected. Ethan offered her a new role, head of events coordination for his firm, a major step up that came with better pay and stability. Sarah hesitated at first, afraid people would think she'd earned it through favor, but Ethan assured her it was because of her talent and hard work. She accepted, and soon, her life transformed. She moved into a better apartment. Lily started at a good school, and for the first time, Sarah felt secure. Yet beneath it all, there was something deeper, an unspoken bond between her and Ethan that neither could quite define. One evening, as they worked late planning another corporate charity event, a sudden thunderstorm rolled in. The sound of rain hitting the glass windows brought back memories of that first night. Ethan looked at her and said quietly, "Funny how rain seems to follow us." Sarah laughed, realizing how far she had come, from the woman stranded on a lonely road to someone who now stood confidently beside the man who had unknowingly changed her life. In that moment, they both knew it wasn't just coincidence that had brought them together. It was something stronger. The charity event they organized that year raised enough money to open a community fund for single parents, an idea Sarah had suggested, inspired by her own struggles. When Ethan announced it on stage, he credited her publicly for the vision. The applause that followed made her eyes fill with tears. She glanced at Lily in the audience, who was clapping proudly, her little face beaming with joy. After the event, Ethan found her standing alone, watching the rain through the glass doors. He walked up beside her, silent for a while. Then he said softly, "Do you remember what you told your daughter that night when the car broke down?" Sarah smiled faintly. I told her everything would be okay, even though I didn't believe it. Ethan turned toward her and said, "You were right. It was always going to be okay." His words hung in the air, warm and certain, wrapping around her like the rain itself. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep creating stories that remind people that kindness still exists, and that one good deed can change a life forever. And before you go, comment below. Kindness comes back around if you believe that every act of compassion finds its way home. Because sometimes the smallest act, a stranger stopping in the rain, a little girl pointing with joy, can turn into the beginning of a story that changes everything. And maybe, just maybe, the people we help are the very ones meant to help us find our way too.